everyone knows this sound. It makes your adrenaline pump.
It's very scary, like something is coming up behind you in a horror movie.
This song creates tension and fearful thoughts about sharks, but sharks aren't that scary. In this episode of the Conscious Kids podcast, we'll dive into the depths and investigate sharks with Dr. Derek Berkholder.
All right, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Good. So we're going to be asking you a few questions. I am Lulu.
I'm Lexi.
And yeah, how did you first get interested in sharks?
So I actually grew up in Michigan, a long way from the ocean, but I'd always loved the water, loved being outside, and my family would travel to Florida to visit friends on spring breaks and things like that. So I always loved the ocean. But my true love for sharks really came from my time at Albion College. So in my undergraduate, I went to a small liberal arts school called Albion College in Michigan. And I was very, very fortunate to have one of the best mentors anybody could ever hope for, a guy named Dr. Jeff Carrier. And Jeff was an amazing researcher and scientist, teacher, mentor that worked with nurse sharks in the Florida Keys and the dry tortugas. And so I was very lucky to take several classes with him, including a sharks class where we were able to go down to the Keys on a spring break trip from college and catch and tag a bunch of sharks and things like that, get to work with them hands. And from there, I was able to meet some other people that eventually turned into an internship at National Geographic and then a PhD project at Florida International University.
That must have been nice.
It was fantastic.
How did you get into the shark business? What sort of education or training do you need?
All right. So getting into the shark business really is, for me, was a lot of meeting the right people at the right time and working very, very hard. So, by working with Jeff Carrier at Albion and then ultimately going down and working at Mote Marine Lab in the Florida Keys, and then to my PhD project at Florida International University, where I worked in Australia for many years, going back and forth, all of those working with sharks in different places. But as far as education, as far as like an undergraduate or even high school, really focusing on obviously the sciences, things like biologies and animal behavior for the kind of questions that I'm interested in. But really, some of the other things to really focus on are things like math, your statistics courses, writing courses. Those are all things that you're really going to need as a scientist. Because everything we do, we have to communicate with other people. We have to write research grants. We have to write scientific papers. And so those writing courses, the statistics courses are especially important to be able to analyze all of that data that we're collecting out in the field and to be able to make sense of it to tell people what we're learning out there.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Can you describe your first experience with a shark?
Yeah. So my first experience with a shark was, outside of maybe seeing one at an aquarium or something like that. But the first time getting hands-on with a shark was in the Florida Keys and working with Jeff. We were able to go out. We set some long lines and drum lines, and we were able to catch some sharks right there in the Keys. And, we were able to tag, we take measurements, tissue samples, and then we were able to quickly release that shark safely back into the water. And even from that first one, I was hooked, pun intended. So I loved every minute of it, and I never wanted to look back. And I've been very, very, very fortunate to continue working with these amazing animals.
Nice. You found your love for sharks.
Absolutely.
Hello, my name is Bon Quique. What are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about sharks?
A lot of the misconceptions really focus around sort of the danger around sharks. Sharks are big animals, or they can be very big animals. They can be very strong. They obviously have a lot of teeth, but they're not these man-eating, killing things out there in the ocean that are hunting people or anything like that. It's just not the way they work. We are not even close to anything on their menu. They don't want anything to do with us. They're more scared of us than we are of them. And so, really, that misconception that they're these dangerous, horrible animals. They are incredibly, incredibly important in our oceans. We need sharks in the oceans, and they're not these horrible things out there. So really, a lot of the work that I do with, not only my research, but also getting people out in the field with us to catch and tag and see these sharks up close really is focused around trying to change some of those misconceptions that people have about sharks, because they have been very, very hurtful and detrimental to the sharks populations all around the world. Great question.
How did you overcome any fears of swimming with sharks?
Luckily, because I learned from some amazing people, and I had that mentorship from Dr. Jeff Carrier and Mike Heithouse and some of these other people, I learned about sharks much more in a hands-on way than most people do. So I never really had that fear of sharks in the water or next to the boat. I always have a very healthy respect for them, because I also have very healthy respect for dogs. They can be, strong, and they can also bite and things like that. They are an animal. So, we're always very careful when we're handling sharks and working with them, but it's a respect and just being careful working with these animals, both for their safety and ours, rather than really a fear.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been attacked by a shark?
I have not. I've never been bitten by a shark. I've been slapped by their tails and things like that. But those were all pretty well deserved, because I had caught them and was trying to measure them and work with them. So, at that point, they were just trying to get away from me. So, the tail slaps and things like that, it was never an attack of any kind. It was just working with those animals up close and personal. But no, I've never been bitten by a shark. And really, I think attack is really not a great word to use pretty much in general, because 99% of any shark bites that happen on people are accidents. They're accidents because the sharks, if it's a surfer out there laying on their surfboard with their arms and legs in the water, when they're up at the surface, they have a silhouette, that really dark outline with the sun behind them, and they look exactly like a seal sitting at the surface. Seal is some of the food for a shark. So when that shark comes in thinking they're going to get a nice bite of seal, and they were like, "Ooh, you don't taste very good," if they very accidentally, have that very, very, very rare bite on a person, they're like, "Ooh, that wasn't what I was looking for," and they go off somewhere else. So it's never. I think attack is not the right word. I think, interaction or a bite or something like that, because like I said, almost every time it's an accident from the shark's point of view. They don't have hands like we do. They can't pick something up. If they want to know if it's food or not, they take a bite. And so obviously they have a lot of teeth, and that bite can do some damage, but they're not going out and hunting people down or anything dangerous, anything like that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And then how deep have you dived into the ocean, if you have?
Yep, I've done quite a bit of diving. I think the deepest I've gone diving is about 100 feet or so. People dive a lot deeper than that, but that's sort of, the limit of my certifications and things like that. And so, yeah, I think mine have been right around that 90 to 100 foot. So.
All right.
What do you enjoy about your job?
Oh, I love pretty much everything about my job. I'm very, very fortunate to work a lot in the field, which is one of my favorite parts about it, to be on the boat, working with these animals in the ocean, tagging, capturing, releasing, all those kinds of things. To be able to work with them up close and personal is really one of my favorite things. And then kind of as a big part of that, sharing that with other people is also one of the things I truly love about what I do, and the job that I have here at Nova Southeastern University, and working with some other organizations as well.
That's nice.
Hi, my name is Shaniqua. And what type of sharks have you encountered?
Ooh, I've got a pretty good list going right now. So in South Florida, some of our main ones that we catch are things like nurse sharks, sandbar sharks, lemon sharks. We do get some tigers, great hammerheads, bull sharks. We get black-tip sharks, Caribbean reef, black nose, Atlantic sharp nose. I've caught a few makos, not in South Florida, but in other places. I've worked with oceanic white-tip sharks. I've caught some deep sea sharks as well, like dogfish and six-gill sharks and things like that. So I've got a pretty good list going. But right here in South Florida, a lot of them are those, nurse and hammer, lemon, tigers, bull sharks, things like that.
Wow, that's a lot of sharks. Do you have names for the sharks that you encounter? Like, do you name them or stuff?
Good question. So it depends on what we're doing. So sometimes we use things like satellite tags, and a satellite tag we mount on the shark's fin or attach it to their body, and it will track everywhere they go. And for those, we have a website that we put those sharks on, and so we do name those just so that we can kind of keep track of who is who. The rest of them, most of the time, we just name them by the number on their tag. So we use a tag called a roto tag that we put on their fin so we know that we've caught it before. And every one of those tags has a different number on it. So a lot of the times we'll stick with just using those numbers instead of actually naming it, unless it's one of those satellite tags.
Cool. Do the sharks have different personalities?
Yeah, they do in some ways. They're the different species. Some of them will, can behave a bit differently depending on, what they are, where they are, what they're doing. So you can see a little bit of differences that way. If you talk to divers who spend a lot of time in the water with sharks, and especially individual sharks, they can definitely start to pick out differences in behaviors, and you could maybe say a personality of some sort. But yeah, there are some individual differences between these animals, and when you spend enough time with them, you can start to piece those apart a little bit.
Cool. Do the sharks remember certain people? Like, do they remember you or no?
I don't know that they remember me, just because most of my stuff is pretty quick interactions where we see them next to the boat for a little while and then we release them, and maybe I'll see them again if we recapture them in a couple of years or something. But there has been some indication that some of these divers that spend hundreds or thousands of hours in the water, especially with some that in certain cases with the same sharks, they do seem to recognize, it seems like they do recognize some people and can kind of pick them apart from others.
Cool. What's your favorite species of sharks?
Probably one of my favorites is the tiger shark, just because I've spent so much time working with them in Australia and the Bahamas and Florida and all kinds of different places. So the tiger shark's is pretty high on my list.
That's cool.
Are you
What's
willing
your
to
favorite?
Oh, my favorite? I don't really have a favorite shark.
That's fair.
Yep.
Are you willing to eat a shark?
I would not eat a shark, no. So sharks, obviously people do eat sharks around the world, everything from the meat, but also things like shark fin soup is one of the big problems for sharks. There's a huge number of sharks that are killed every year around the world for their fins and meat and things like that. We actually estimate over 100 million sharks are killed every year around the world. 100 million sharks are being killed, a lot of those for food. And because of that, I know, how much damage we're doing to our shark populations around the world. And a lot of our sharks aren't doing very, very well at all. And so I personally would not eat sharks, and I don't recommend anybody eat sharks, just because, one, it's not great for the sharks, obviously, because we are hurting their populations, but it's also not very good for people either. Sharks are at the top of the food chain, and there's something called bioaccumulation. So as different things eat up the food chain, things like mercury and other heavy metals and toxins and things can really build up in tissues. And so there's some indication that people that eat a lot of sharks, they start to have other medical problems because of some of those heavy metals and things. So I definitely wouldn't, and I definitely recommend people do not. Good question.
What is the most... You work with Sharks for Kids, right?
I do, yeah.
What's the most challenging thing working with Sharks for Kids?
So Sharks for Kids is a nonprofit that we started almost 12 years ago now, coming up on 12 years. And, we provide a lot of great information for the public as well as teachers to learn and educate people about sharks. We give talks all around the world virtually on things like Zoom and Skype and things like that, as well as in person where we travel to schools. We also love to get kids out in the field tagging sharks with, like the program at Nova Southeast University, where I also work, and then, get people diving with sharks, snorkeling with sharks, really just getting people to learn more and be excited about these animals and hopefully figure out ways to help protect them a little bit. Like with any small nonprofit, really some of our biggest challenges, because people love sharks, so they love what we're talking about. It's just like a lot of research and everything else, funding is always the biggest hurdle for us. We want to make sure we can offer as much as possible. And so, finding the fundraising and the grants and the things like that to be able to keep everything going is always a big challenge and something that we work on all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you want your kids to also work with sharks?
I want anybody that's excited about the ocean or excited about sharks to be able to work with sharks. I think they're an amazing animal and there's so much that we need to learn about them. I would want, whether it's my kids or my family's kids or whoever it is, I would want them to do the things that they're excited about. If sharks are what they're excited about, then absolutely I would love for them to be able to work with sharks.
How can someone learn more about what you do?
There's a lot of ways you can learn more about what we do. We do offer shark tagging expeditions at Nova, so you can join us on the boat. You can come out, catch sharks, tag them, measure, collect samples, learn about them as we're learning about them. You can go to the website ghritracking.org. That's ghritracking.org. And you can look at the satellite tag sharks that Nova has put out there. Dr. Mahmood Shivji and his team at Nova have satellite tagged a lot of different sharks and billfish. So you can learn from his website. And then obviously Sharks for Kids is sharks4kids.com. You can go to that website and there's a huge amount of information, activities, photos, videos, all kinds of different things to learn about sharks and learn about what we do to help protect sharks all around the world.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. It was great to talk to you. You guys had some amazing questions.
I hope you have a great day.
Here, I'll jump in.
Thank you. You too.
And one of the things that is very exciting is that these students who did this interview are also going to go shark tagging with Dr. Berkholder and his team at Sharks for Kids. So go ahead and check out what they're doing. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so that you could stay tuned for our next amazing episode with this wonderful group of kids. And until then, take care.